In the quiet suburbs of New South Wales, a former tennis coach transformed himself into a self proclaimed world teacher, guiding thousands into a world of energy readings, reincarnation claims, and healing, I guess I should say, healing rituals that few outside his circle could ever really comprehend. Sergey Benhayon founded Universal Medicine in 1999. This is a wellness organization that promised spiritual clarity and energetic purity. But what unfolded over the next 2 decades would lead to courtroom battles, widespread media scrutiny, and harrowing survivor accounts that would shake the Australian wellness movement to its core. Today, we are going to dive deep into trying to understand the universal medicine cult, which just basically meant that this guy was groping women to try to heal them of their ailments in certain areas of their body. Yeah, sad days. So, with all that being said, please sit back, relax, and take a deep breath. It's time to let the fresh air in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new. My name is Erin, and I am fascinated by all things cult, true crime, and unique spiritual practices. I post a couple videos every single week on this channel, so please subscribe if this is the kind of thing that you are into. I would love to have you here. To be honest, I have not been that consistent with my uploads. A lot's been going on. I think all of us know the mental health hasn't been all the way there, the motivation, the bandwidth, but Mercury's out of retrograde, y'all, if that's something you're into. And I have a much better handle on my schedule. So we are going to be churning out some videos, y'all. I'm going to be batch shooting and getting back into my at least twice a week upload schedule. So please let me know if there's anything in particular you'd really like me to cover. I feel like there are so many things going on in the world and in the cultiverse and true crime that I'm like, I don't even know where to start. I also kind of want to do a very just purely fact-based exploration and breakdown of some of the things Trump says and some of his cohorts slash inner circle say and respond and deflect and showcase in real time how he is using very culty tactics. So if that's something you'd be into, like a weekly or a bi-weekly, every other week. Yeah. If that's something you'd be interested in, just let me know down below. I know it can be tricky discussing politics on YouTube, but to me, Trump leans more towards like cult leader, dictator. But that's not just me. That's, I think, majority of the world. But let me know if that's something you would like to see. It would just be a very like, no real opinion, just breakdown of the tactics that are being used because I just keep seeing them and I'm like, man, people need to understand what he's doing. Anyways, let's jump into this really fun video about a guy who said that he was ethereal and divine so that he could get away with groping women. All right, let's jump in. So, Sergey was born in 1964 in Montevideo, Uruguay, and at the age of 6, him and his family moved all the way to Australia and decided to settle in a beachside suburb of Sydney. His early life was relatively quiet, so there's not much public information known about his formative years, but he is said to have had a pretty conventional upbringing, actually, which isn't always the case, am I right? He was known to be a very diligent and physically active student with a strong inclination towards competitive sports, particularly tennis. Now, as a young man, Sergey began coaching tennis and he gained a reputation in local communities as a very skilled and charismatic coach. His coaching career flourished through the 1980s and 1990s, during which he ran a successful tennis academy and monitored numerous junior players. So, by all accounts, he was committed to his profession and would develop close relationships with clients and their families throughout his coaching lifetime. Sergey did marry and start a family and eventually raised 4 children named Simone, Natalie, Michael, and Curtis. Around this time, he and his family relocated to the Northern Rivers region of New South Wales. The area, known for its alternative lifestyle communities and spiritual subcultures, could provide some fertile ground for the spiritual transformation that he would soon undergo. Because it was during this time that he reportedly began exploring metaphysical ideas and healing practices, increasingly integrating esoteric concepts into his worldview. He would later describe this particular phase of his life as one of awakening. He claimed to experience a growing awareness of energies and spiritual impressions that guided him beyond the physical realm. I'm just going to say that again. He was starting to feel energies and spiritual impressions. Just wanted everyone to hear that because I feel like entity, source, God, whatever it is always named something else depending on what group is talking about it. Now, while he was still working as a tennis coach, he began offering these informal healing sessions, combining massage with spiritual insight, which really just sounds like a conflict of interest. It reminds me of that gymnast coach who it was later reported that he was like giving too personal of massages to the young girls that he was coaching and saying that they were like for the betterment of their skill. It's so predatory and gross. So, clients would later report that he would often speak of reading their energy and intuiting the source of their life problems, even in those early days before he decided to become a cult leader. So it was in this setting, amid a career in athletics, a young family, and a growing fascination with spiritual energy, that Sergey experienced what he would later describe as a profound energetic event. And this would take place in 1999. Now, this event marked the turning point in his career, and it set the foundation for the creation of universal medicine. Now, Sergey's spiritual worldview was heavily influenced by the writings of a woman named Alice A. Bailey. She was a British American writer, teacher, and occultist whose work formed a significant branch of modern esoteric philosophy. Bailey authored 24 books, many of which she claimed were telepathically dictated by a spiritual master known as Dwal Kul or the Tibetan. Sounds familiar, Abraham Hicks. Her teachings became known as the Ageless Wisdom Tradition and served as an expansion of the earlier theosophical teachings of Helena Blavatsky. Sergey reportedly encountered Bailey's writings during the early years of his spiritual exploration, at a time when he was immersing himself in metaphysical texts in search of this deeper meaning beyond his coaching career. Bailey's teachings definitely struck a chord with him, due probably because of their synthesis of spirituality, science, and structured cosmology. He began to view her work not only as a source of wisdom, but actually a confirmation of his own intuitive experiences and energetic perceptions. So, in interviews and in workshops, he often acknowledged Bailey's influence and recommended her books to students who were looking to understand the broader framework behind his own teachings. And you know what? We don't hear about that often, do we? When a cult leader actually steals ideas from other people and actually credits those people. The Teal Swan series I did almost a year ago. I'll try to link it in below and post it up here. She literally has been caught plagiarizing, but claims it's like source energy that she's hearing. It's actually like wild how many of these people do this. So, anyways, Bailey, this inspiration for Sergey, proposed that human evolution is spiritual at its core and that humanity is being guided by a hidden spiritual hierarchy composed of ascended masters or advanced beings who have transcended ordinary human consciousness. These masters were said to oversee the spiritual development of humanity and work in harmony with cosmic law to promote unity, healing, and enlightenment. If only. If only. So, this concept profoundly resonated with Sergey's own teachings about the hierarchy and the plan. Bailey's doctrines of the 7 rays postulated that all life was influenced by one or more divine energetic streams. These rays, each associated with a particular virtue and spiritual mission, formed a psychological and cosmological framework that helped practitioners understand human behavior and spiritual purpose. While Sergey did not use the exact terminology, his classification of energy into pranic or harmful and fiery, divine, mimicked this structure, promoting a world view in which all aspects of life were energetically charged and morally significant. Which is so fascinating to me because I hear the word pranic and I think of pranayama as in yoga, which your prana is basically your breath, your life force. So to redefine pranic, which in most areas of spirituality might mean your breath and might be sacred, he's defining that as harmful. And then the fiery, which I think in my brain anyways, maybe you agree, but fiery gives me kind of a negative connotation. Like when we think of like positive heaven and negative hell, we think of hell being this fiery, scary, burn in hell place. But he's kind of redefining it as this divine. It reminds me of the book Cultish. I have right there by Amanda Montell. She talks a lot about how cults use linguistics to really get into your brain. And I think that this is a great example of that. You should definitely check out her book. It is fantastic. So, Bailey also emphasized esoteric healing and taught that all disease originated in the etheric body due to blockages or misalignments between the soul and the personality. So, any physical ailment that you have is caused by this blockage between you and spirit, you and your soul. So, that would mean that you could heal literally anything by reconnecting yourself to spirit, which is such a destructive way to think because this means that it is inherently the human being who needs healing's fault for feeling sick or getting sick because they haven't connected to spirit. Like it's like why would this divine energy punish me though? It's one of the most aggravating aspects of spirituality and these cults that it just irks me because so many cults will just basically blame you for any negative feeling, negative emotion, negative experience. So in this case, like many law of attraction cults, healing required realignment, soul contact, and a higher state of vibrational resonance. And this directly is echoed in Sergey's core belief that all physical illness stems from spiritual or energetic disharmony. Many of his techniques, including esoteric breast massage. Esoteric breast massage. Yeah. Just think about that one first. Think about what that means and how disturbing that is. He also would use something called chakra puncture, which if you don't know, your root chakra is located like below your tailbone, basically in your groin. I don't know what he's chakra puncturing with, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be inappropriate. But according to him, this massage and this puncture was all designed to restore alignment. Don't worry about it. I'll just massage your breasts and puncture your chakras, and all of your ailments will be healed. Okay. Now, what about reincarnation? Because so many cults think about reincarnation or promote reincarnation or embrace that idea of karma, that you're here having not so good of an experience because in your past life you were terrible or something to that nature. And if you're good in this life, you'll have an even better next life. Well, Bailey believed that souls returned through many lifetimes to learn, grow, and eventually merge with divine purpose. But Sergey went a step further, claiming to identify exact past lives of himself and others. His assertions that he was the reincarnation of Saint Peter, Leonardo da Vinci, and Pythagoras, and that his daughter Simone had actually at one point been Winston Churchill. Okay, so this added somewhat of a mythological layer to his teachings, and it reinforced his perceived spiritual authority. Don't piss me off. My daughter used to be Winston Churchill. So, moreover, Bailey wrote about the ongoing battle between forces of light and darkness, Christ and the spiritual hierarchy versus the so called dark brothers who sought to obstruct the divine plan. Sergey, on the other hand, described this Dark Brothers idea as the Dark Lodge, and this was a malevolent force that opposed energetic integrity and divine work. So, his followers were taught to remain vigilant against these energies and to view dissenters and critics as channels for dark interference. Classic us versus them mentality. So, lastly, Bailey's claim to channel her material telepathically from Dwal Kul became a prototype for modern channeling. Now, Sergey didn't explicitly use the term channeling, but he did describe receiving knowledge as energetic impress, a concept that is very similar that suggests this passive reception of divine or cosmic knowledge. So both of these figures were presenting themselves as basically conduits for wisdom beyond the scope of ordinary human comprehension. They're special, they're connected. That this gives them more status within their group. So Sergey was adapting Bailey's broad philosophical constructs into an applied lifestyle system that touched nearly every aspect of daily life, from diet to relationships to medical choices and even personal hygiene. Where Bailey would provide an overarching metaphysical framework, Sergey operationalized these ideas through rituals, bodywork techniques, and a behavioral code that he called energetic integrity. Whenever cult leaders use words like integrity, it just makes me want to laugh. His innovation lay in creating a lived, rule based spiritual practice that was centered on aligning one's physical life to the cosmic truths that Bailey articulated. This transformation of theoretical esotericism into embodied doctrine helped universal medicine appeal to a wide audience who were seeking not just abstract insight, but also concrete practices for health, harmony, and purpose. So, altogether, Alice A. Bailey's cosmology, language, and method of transmitting spiritual knowledge provided the intellectual scaffolding upon which Sergey built universal medicine. Now, while he repackaged and rebranded many of her core concepts, the philosophical lineage is unmistakable. Her influence allowed him to weave this very complex spiritual system that blended healing, reincarnation, energy science, and divine hierarchy into this all encompassing worldview that would actually captivate but also polarize thousands. So, Aaron, what are you getting at? Can we try to understand this cult and not just its inspiration? I'm glad you asked. So, we're back to the year 1999. And Sergey claimed to have received what he described as an energetic impress while giving a massage treatment, most likely to one of the possibly underaged people that he was coaching. Great. Now, this profound experience, according to him, opened a direct spiritual connection with a higher spiritual realm and initiated his mission to bring forth esoteric wisdom that had been lost to mainstream religion and medicine. He referred to this moment as a reawakening of an ancient lineage of wisdom that he and only he was meant to represent in the modern era. So, what followed would be the establishment of universal medicine, or initially operating out of his home in, I'm not going to say this city right, but I have to because it's funny. Gunelaba. Gunelaba? If we throw an Australian accent on it, does it sound better? Oh no. Gunelaba. Gunelaba. Sorry, Australians, if you're watching this, I do apologize. So, anyways, his cult began as a small operation that offered massages and energy healing sessions. But over time, it developed into a full-fledged movement with literally thousands of followers around the world. The organization promoted itself as a complementary health provider offering workshops, retreats, and healing sessions that were grounded in the form of energetic medicine. I don't really know if you can talk about ethereal energies and being grounded at the same time, but that is just my opinion. So Sergey positioned himself not just as this religious leader, but as a practitioner and a philosopher of energetic science. He claimed to be able to read energy and diagnose spiritual misalignments through, of course, touch and intuition. This diagnosis, he said, could reveal not just physical ailments, but also emotional wounds, karmic residues, and even memories from past lives. By the early 2000s, Universal Medicine had begun expanding its offerings. Seminars on self care, women's health, because of course he's targeting women, relationships, and nutrition were conducted across Australia and even the UK. also began training and accrediting practitioners in its esoteric modalities. These included his now infamous esoteric breast massages and chakra punctures, as well as connective tissue therapy and a broad doctrine referred to as the ageless wisdom teachings. One of the most defining features of the early years was the strong emphasis on energetic purity and personal responsibility, because of course, everything is your fault. Sergey taught that every choice a person made had an energetic consequence. Food, music, conversation, and even posture could either align someone with divine energy or separate them from it. He warned that alcohol, caffeine, emotional expression, and even certain types of physical touch were energetic pollutants that harmed the soul's connection to the divine. Except when he punctures your root chakra, am I right? This guy's disgusting. And imagine thinking that emotional expression is basically a sin. This beautiful thing that separates us from the animals, right? This beautiful thing that makes us more human. But what he wants is everyone to shut off their emotions, because the more you shut off your emotions, the more you shut off things like your instincts, your intuition, those red flags that start coming. And if you're starting to kind of subscribe to this belief system, you're either not going to speak up when you have a visceral reaction to something, or you're being conditioned to recognize that if you are having a negative reaction to something that he says, then you're making yourself sick. You're separating yourself from the divine. It's such an abusive tactic. It's almost like he's setting someone up to brainwash and indoctrinate themselves, because every time they have a thought or a feeling, they're going to think, I can't feel. I'm not allowed to feel. I'm not allowed to show that feeling. It is not good. And it's actually, and if you're a psychologist, psychiatrist, but I've had therapists who have said unprocessed feelings can create discomfort, disease, illnesses in certain ways. So it's actually potentially the opposite. I don't know for sure. That's just what someone has said to me and I've seen, around, but I haven't done enough research to say it definitively. But you can. I mean, I know when I have anxiety and I can't get past it or process it or express it, I'll feel a pain in my chest. I'll feel this heaviness, this pain in the center of my chest. So if you've ever experienced something like that, please share it down below. All of that to just say that this guy's full of shit, okay? So followers were encouraged to adopt a very regimented lifestyle, and I'm going to list these off, but just know I'm kind of giggling in my head because I kind of do these things. Guess I'm so enlightened and spiritually healthy. But he says that you should go to bed before 9 p.m. to stay in sync with natural energy cycles, which I try to be in bed by 9. He had restricted diets on people, so no gluten, no dairy, no alcohol, and no sugar. You know that I'm a vegan babe, and I haven't really been drinking alcohol. Gluten I love, sugar, love that glucose, baby. And he also enacted rituals of daily energetic hygiene. Daily energetic hygiene. So this would include a light massage, Affirmations, that's fine. The light massage feels questionable. And also scheduled reflection periods to clear any energetic debris. As the group's following grew, so did its infrastructure. Because guess what? When a cult has actual physical property, they don't have to pay taxes on some of that because they're offering a service. Isn't that fun? That's why you'll see ghost towns down in Clearwater, Florida, because that's where Scientology is headquartered. Yeah, aggravating, huh? Meanwhile, we're all starving. I hope you're not, but times are tough out there. Times are tough. You should have tofu instead of eggs. It'll save you a lot of money. I digress. So, Universal Medicine acquired properties for hosting these international retreats. They set up a publishing house for Sergey's extensive written works, and they built a network of affiliated practitioners and complementary organizations because, of course, think of Nexium with all of its sub organizations that only further separated the group, or think of Twin Flames Universe and their subsets, so they just control every aspect of your life. The organization also established links with certain health professionals, which brought it further into public and legal scrutiny. So, though it began as this health and wellness organization, Universal Medicine soon bore the hallmark of a spiritual community, with Sergey as its unquestioned leader. Followers would refer to him in reverent terms, and many began to adopt his teachings not just as guidelines, but as an entire worldview. Critics would later describe this shift as the moment when universal medicine crossed the line from alternative healing into full-blown cultism. Following the founding of Universal Medicine, Sergey began developing a number of unique healing modalities. These included that breast massage, which he claimed would release negative energies stored in the breast tissue, ovarian readings, which were meant to reveal emotional and spiritual blockages, and chakra punctures, a technique involving gentle needles that supposedly realign the body's energetic systems. I don't want a needle anywhere near my groin. Thank you so much. Or near me. I actually have a phobia. He also introduced esoteric connective tissue therapy, which was said to restore energetic harmony through light touch and awareness. I am touching you. Are you aware that I'm touching you? I'm touching you here. Are you aware that I am touching you? That's how I imagine it would have gone. Sergey taught that all physical illness stemmed from some spiritual root. So, for example, cancer wasn't a biological disorder, but rather the manifestation of lifetimes of unloving choices. It's your fault and your past life self's fault and your past life self's fault. You did it to yourself. How could you treat yourself like this? I'm sorry. What? How insulting to someone who is grappling with the challenge of cancer or any other illness or disease. He also instructed followers to avoid certain foods and behaviors that he considered pranic or energetically damaging. So he would advocate instead for a lifestyle of what he called energetic integrity. So we're going to circle around to emotional expression because he would discourage this because he argued that emotions were an indication of energetic disturbance. Even movement and music were regulated. Certain types of music were banned for their evil qualities, and followers were taught specific ways to walk and breathe to ensure alignment with fiery energy. Yeah. As expanded, his teachings evolved into detailed cosmology. He positioned himself as a world teacher, part of a spiritual lineage, and he claimed that his mission was to help humanity ascend into a higher vibrational frequency. Can these cult leaders please just get a little more original? The narrative became increasingly hierarchical. Sergey was at the top, followed by advanced students, then the general public, and then those misaligned with divine energies. Ew, get out of here. So, as universal medicine grew, so did Sergey's influence, and of course, financial gain. He established a tiered structure of events, from introductory workshops to exclusive retreats, some of which cost thousands of dollars to attend. Attendees were encouraged to repeat courses because, of course, they were encouraged to subscribe to his writings and seek out private sessions so he could, just do all the fondling that he wished. His books, often very long and complex and self-published, were sold directly through UM's publishing arm, while courses and treatments were often packaged as essential for energetic well-being. Critics alleged that this created a financial dependency among followers. Now, what does recruitment into the group look like? Because I always like to kind of break this down so people can see how subtle it can truly be. So, in this case, this was a very subtle but very powerful psychological technique. Many newcomers were introduced by word of mouth, friends, family, or even those health professionals who were already involved with UM. Initial exposure typically came through a massage session or a health seminar. Now, these seemingly benign events gradually introduced participants to the more metaphysical and doctrinal aspects of the movement. What began as wellness advice often escalated into deeper spiritual commitment, with Sergey at the helm. Reports emerged that those drawn into the inner circle of universal medicine were encouraged to cut off ties with pranic influences, including skeptical loved ones. Members began isolating themselves from family members, changing their diets, quitting jobs, and even restructuring their finances. Some followers gave large donations to UM or left money to the organization in their wills. In the case of Judith McIntyre, a woman dying of breast cancer, Sergey received $1.4 million in bequests, which her family later contested as undue influence. Can you imagine believing so much that he is healing your cancer that you leave him almost $1.5 million in your will to him, and you still pass away likely from cancer? It's just utterly heartbreaking. As public scrutiny increased, former members and their families began sharing deeply personal and often troubling accounts of their experiences inside universal medicine. These survivor testimonies revealed patterns of emotional manipulation, financial exploitation, and spiritual coercion. One of the most widely reported cases involves Miss Judith McIntyre. She was a terminally ill breast cancer patient, the one we just spoke about, who donated $1.4 million to him and his cause. Emails released during court proceedings revealed that Sergey had provided Judith with spiritual advice that influenced her financial decisions, including instructions on how to structure who will and whom to trust. He warned her that her own children were energetically destabilizing her and implied that their concerns about her being involved with this cult leader were orchestrated by negative spiritual forces. He's basically saying if she interacts with her family, the people who love her, who want to spend as much time with her as possible before she passes, are negative spiritual forces. What a vile human being. He also advised secrecy regarding the large donations because, of course, to him, it was because of, oh no, the potential influence of the Dark Lodge, that malevolent energy that is going to ruin your life and make you even more sick. Like, give me a break. My heart breaks for the McIntyre family. Just breaks. Another prominent voice was that of Esther Rocket, a former client who became a key whistleblower. And I always have to commend whistleblowers for their bravery because this is not an easy thing to do. After attending a healing session where she said she felt uncomfortable and violated, Rocket began documenting her concerns and gathering other testimonies from other followers on a blog. She recounted that during her session, she was touched inappropriately, and that spiritual justifications were given for what would otherwise be considered boundary crossing behavior. As her blog gained traction, others began reaching out with similar stories. Survivors described the progression from casual wellness sessions to full immersions in UM's teachings. One woman shared how what began as a massage appointment eventually led to her restructuring her entire life, abandoning friendships, following a restrictive diet, and dedicating thousands of dollars to attending seminars, purchasing books, and receiving treatments. Over time, she said she became emotionally dependent on for approval and validation. Any deviation from its lifestyle codes was met with spiritual explanations of energetic contamination or possession by some kind of pranic force. The workshops themselves were described as intense, sometimes all day affairs that combined lectures with movement exercises, meditations, dietary guidelines, and of course, emotional introspection. Attendees were often encouraged to share personal struggles in front of the group, with Sergey or another senior facilitators offering interpretations rooted in past life karma or energetic blockages. Participants frequently left with a list of recommended treatments and lifestyle changes, as well as encouragement to book private sessions or enroll in future workshops. Some members likened the sessions to indoctrination, gradually replacing independent thought with UM's strict metaphysical ideology. Healing sessions took place in a highly controlled environment where lighting, music, and even the temperature were managed to create a particular energetic atmosphere. Clients described being asked deeply personal questions, then undergoing physical treatment that could include light touch or more invasive techniques such as breast massages or ovarian readings. The treatments were often framed as a way to clear past trauma or release stored emotional energy, with explanations anchored in UM's very unique interpretation of spiritual anatomy. Some former participants later expressed confusion or regret about what they had consented to, stating that they felt pressured or even spiritually manipulated during these vulnerable moments. Other former members recounted how they were encouraged to shun their family members who expressed concern about Several families reported estrangement, with followers refusing to attend family events or even speak with relatives that were deemed unsupportive. One man shared that his wife became increasingly absorbed in ultimately leaving her job and donating most of their savings to the organization. Their marriage collapsed, and he has since campaigned publicly for greater awareness of what he describes as UM's cult like control. Now, that is a good husband. Testimonies also highlighted the psychological toll of the organization's teachings. Survivors reported heightened anxiety, guilt, and fear, particularly around energetic integrity. UM's strict rules around food, sex, sleep, and social engagement created a rigid lifestyle that some said felt impossible to maintain. Those who broke the rules or questioned teachings were warned of spiritual consequences, including that energetic possession or even sickness. Some followers developed really obsessive behaviors or eating disorders, according to accounts shared during legal proceedings and even media investigations. Financially, many followers were drained by their involvement. Courses, retreats, healing sessions, and the publications all added up to thousands of dollars per person annually. Some individuals said they were pressured into repeat sessions with the implication that true energetic alignment required constant investment. I'm sure it does. The organization's structure also encouraged inner circle access in exchange for deeper levels of commitment and contribution, further creating those tiers of belonging, making many people feel that they basically had to pay their way to spiritual enlightenment. Perhaps, though, the most disturbing were the allegations from women who participated in esoteric breast massage and other body based therapies. This could be triggering for some people who have experienced SA of any level, any kind. So if you need to bow out here, totally understand. Several people described feeling confused, ashamed, or violated afterwards. Though the practices were explained as part of some spiritual healing, some women later recognized the sessions as inappropriate and they ended up filing formal complaints. Critics pointed out that these techniques lacked any scientific or medical basis and had no safeguards to prevent abuse. Former clients also noted that there was little to no follow up care or emotional support provided after these very intense experiences, and this left them feeling abandoned the second their financial contribution had been made. Additional survivor accounts described the retreats and residential programs that offered as even more immersive and more emotionally intense. These multi day events, often held at rural properties owned or leased by Universal Medicine, created this environment of complete energetic control. Participants had to follow a strict schedule starting at sunrise with meditative walks and sacred movement classes, which is an interpretive dance like practice that Sergey claimed helped align the participants with divine energy. Meals were prepared according to dietary principles, strictly avoiding gluten, dairy, alcohol, caffeine, and sugar. Conversations during meals often revolved around the energetic properties of food and the dangers of contamination from pranic substances. Attendees were encouraged to journal extensively, self assess their energetic integrity, and confess personal doubts or lapses, often in front of the group. And this created a confessional like atmosphere that some described as emotionally coercive, and it also gives you this false sense of bonding in a group. I don't care what workshop you're in, if you are being encouraged to share some of your darkest truths or secrets in front of a group of people that you barely know or trust, do not do it. It is a tactic to make you feel like you are falsely bonding with these people. You will feel a false sense of closeness and trust with these people, especially when you are coerced into sharing these things. And then you see everyone else doing it, and you're in this space of you have to accept and not judge anybody, but someone might share something that raises so many alarm flags or makes you really uncomfortable, and you're like, well, if I seem uncomfortable, this is going to mean I'm judging them, and this is supposed to be a safe space. I shouldn't be judging them. At least that's what happened to me in the group I was involved in. There were some things I really wish I hadn't turned a blind eye to for the sake of, I don't want to judge anyone. I want to help create this safe space. It can be dangerous, especially when people are admitting to harming other people or breaking the law. Now, some workshops also included role playing exercises where participants would act out karmic events from supposed past lives to better understand their current emotional and physical conditions. In some cases, participants were asked to identify others in the room as individuals that they had harmed or had been harmed by in previous incarnations. These activities would sometimes lead to tears, breakdowns, and even group interventions where Sergey or his senior facilitators would have to offer some energetic readings for the situation. Some former attendees said that they left these retreats psychologically unmoored and spiritually dependent on for continued validation and guidance. Another aspect of concern highlighted by survivors was the reverence shown to Sergey during sessions. He was often introduced as a world teacher and the most evolved man on earth, and many followers treated his words as absolute truth. Seating arrangements, lighting, and even how followers addressed him were tightly managed to reinforce his authority. Some described a subtle but powerful culture of fear around questioning or contradicting him, with those who did being energetically ostracized or shamed into compliance. One woman recounted how, after years in she could no longer make any personal decisions about her health, her relationship, or her finances without consulting a practitioner. She said when she finally left, she felt like she had to relearn how to be a person. And that's a direct quote. Parents of followers also shared stories of heartbreak. Some described watching their children become increasingly isolated and dogmatic. One mother testified in court that her daughter became fixated on achieving energetic purity, lost a significant amount of weight due to dietary restrictions, and cut off all family ties except for interactions that were deemed as safe. In an especially harrowing case, a former follower who had entrusted her emotional and physical healing to facilitators said that she was encouraged to relive sexual trauma from a past life as part of a healing exercise. She described the experience as re traumatizing and claimed that she was then blamed for not progressing spiritually fast enough. She was blamed. It was her fault. Disgusting and heartbreaking aren't even strong enough words to describe this. These stories, they illustrate the blurred boundary between healing and harm that many critics believed defined UM's most damaging practices. In totality, these accounts paint a picture of a group that demanded absolute devotion, extracted significant emotional and financial resources, and offered little accountability. The rituals, language, and therapeutic framework, if you can call it that, were presented as healing, but they were often becoming tools of control. As legal cases and public awareness grew, more members started stepping forward to confirm that their trust had been exploited, their boundaries crossed, and their lives dramatically altered in the name of spiritual enlightenment. While some maintain that changed their lives for the better, the growing chorus of survivor voices has brought attention to the dangers of spiritual organizations that operate without regulatory oversight. They promote unverifiable claims and center power in a single charismatic figure. Further details from court records and media investigations revealed that some followers reported feeling psychologically hijacked by the culture within One former student who had once been part of Sergey's inner circle recounted how she was praised when strictly adhering to the lifestyle and publicly shamed when she fell short. She described the fear of being seen as energetically impure or misaligned, which could result in public correction during these workshops. Others mentioned that Sergey would often make sweeping proclamations about participants' past lives, sometimes identifying them as ancient figures or revealing karmic traumas in front of the group. These readings were rarely questioned due to the immense reverence for Sergey's supposed divine insight. One man described being told that he had R-worded someone in a past life, which explained his current energetic blockages. He was encouraged to undergo a cycle of body work and workshops to resolve his karma, leading to thousands of dollars in additional costs. How damaging! You want to be a good person. You want to be a good person so badly that you're pouring thousands of dollars into a cult, only to be told that you did one of the worst possible things you could ever do to another human being in your past life, and that's why you're not good enough yet? What? One longtime participant said that she was told by Sergey that if she did not follow the path of energetic integrity as taught by she would return in her next life with a disability or chronic disease. The fear of energetic repercussions, combined with a constant sense of needing to correct one's vibrational alignment, kept her locked in a cycle of guilt and dependence. Another common concern was how young girls were drawn into the organization through their parents. Often framed children as spiritually sensitive beings who needed to be protected from the energetically corrupt outside world. Critics argued that this dynamic created undue pressure on children to adopt strict practices and worldviews at an early age. Some survivors also described girls being groomed to be, I hate to say it, energetically pure, which included participation in sacred movement classes and adherence to certain adult like spiritual codes. Allegations even emerged that young girls were subject to the same bodywork sessions as the adults, though this does remain as a particularly contentious and legally sensitive topic. So I guess I should be saying allegedly this was happening. A number of former followers also described that they gave over their wills, finances, or estate plans to related trusts or individuals under the belief that they were helping serve humanity's divine evolution. In the case of Judith McIntyre, it was later revealed in court that she had altered her will to leave nearly everything to which included shares, real estate, and very large cash deposits. Her daughter testified that she couldn't believe her mother had been spiritually manipulated in her most vulnerable state. Many survivors expressed a deep sense of betrayal by the doctrine, the leadership, and by their own hopes that they were doing something spiritually meaningful. The aftermath for those who left included not only financial loss, but often the rebuilding of family relationships, loss of a community that they had once called home, and of course, they needed therapy to deal with anxiety, depression, or even PTSD like symptoms. Investigative journalists who covered the group noted that much of UM's power lay in its ability to make ordinary people feel spiritually special while simultaneously breaking down their personal autonomy. The blend of empowerment and disempowerment created this psychological paradox that kept many people involved far longer than they anticipated. It's like a psychological spiritual loop. These layers of emotional, financial, and spiritual entanglement form the core of what makes universal medicine a cautionary tale. The survivor testimonies continue to serve as critical documentation of the dangers posed by charismatic authority figures who offer unconditional answers to life's most complicated questions at great personal cost to those who follow them. So, these allegations of inappropriate physical contact and spiritual manipulation did start to rise to the surface. The most disturbing came from clients and former members who described feeling violated or even confused by those healing sessions that involved touching their private areas, because Sergey justified it all as being energetically necessary. So, when this whistleblower, Esther Rocket, started writing her blog and more people started speaking out, guess who decided to sue her? You guessed it, Sergey. She was sued by him in 2018 for defamation because he was trying to silence her claims, but the lawsuit backfired spectacularly. The New South Wales Supreme Court not only found in favor of Rocket, but agreed with many of her characterizations of Sergey. The jury determined that it was substantially true that he was leading a socially harmful cult, made bogus healing claims, and had an indecent interest in young girls. The court found that he intentionally engaged in inappropriate physical contact during healing sessions and was a, quote, charlatan who made fraudulent medical claims, unquote. You just love when justice is served to these disgusting cult leaders. The legal proceedings exposed a troubling picture of UM's inner workings. Emails even revealed how Sergey had advised followers to avoid any doctor who questioned Yeah, he promoted himself as a higher authority on health and wellness than medical professionals. I feel like every health and wellness influencer needs to hear this. You could be sued. You could go to jail because you're telling people not to listen to doctors. Just saying. Some clients even described becoming disillusioned when they realized how much time, energy, and money they had devoted to what now seemed like spiritual manipulation. I've only had a small taste of the mental gymnastics and sadness that occurs when you realize you're a part of a problematic group, but to this extent, to this scale, when it's affecting your health, your loved ones, you're isolated, your finances, I mean, it must just be so earth shatteringly difficult. So, following this guilty verdict, the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency began scrutinizing all of those health professionals who had been associated with Several doctors, dentists, and allied health workers who referred patients to or integrated its teachings into their practice came under investigation. Some even faced disciplinary actions or even public reprimands. In addition to the court proceedings, Universal Medicine faced family court challenges. In one high profile case in the UK, a family court judge ruled that a mother's involvement in UN posed psychological risks to her child. The judge described Universal Medicine as a cult with potentially harmful and sinister elements, and ordered the mother to sever ties with the organization if she wished to retain custody of her child. The Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission also reviewed UM's charity status. Although the group had registered some of its entities as charitable organizations, which allowed them to claim these tax benefits, scrutiny increased over whether those entities were operating in the public interest or functioning primarily to support Sergey's teachings and his own personal wealth. Media outlets such as ABC's Four Corners, the Sydney Morning Herald, and The Guardian Australia conducted independent investigations that exposed deeper layers of the group's structure. Journalists revealed the scale of the organization's real estate holdings, the control of its publishing arms, and the inner sanctum that surrounded Sergey. These reports often featured interviews with disillusioned former followers, some of whom compared UM to Scientology in terms of hierarchy, secrecy, and psychological control. And public backlash increased after the verdict and after the media attention. Petitions were circulated to remove UM-affiliated content from local community centers and educational events. Online forums and Facebook groups formed to support former members and provide resources for families seeking to help loved ones who were still inside the group. But despite the verdict and criticism, Sergey retained a core group of loyal followers who continued to attend workshops, retreats, and online seminars. Some of these followers dismissed the legal outcomes as part of a broader, energetic resistance to truth and claimed that the judicial system was influenced by pranic or evil forces trying to suppress the divine teachings of universal medicine. Yeah, the cult that no one really knows about, and then we find out about it and are like, that's a cult. It's disgraceful. It should go down and burn in hell. Yeah, we've all been conspiring to take it down seriously, even though we all just found out about it. Makes a lot of sense. The legal scrutiny and public backlash marked a turning point for Although it was not officially shut down, its influence did diminish, and the once growing community became more secretive and reclusive. The extensive documentation from the trial and media investigations continues to serve as a resource for those examining modern cult dynamics and the legal limits of spiritual health claims in Australia. Despite the damaging legal judgments and public criticism, has not fully disappeared. The group hosts retreats, healing courses, and online seminars. Sergey also remains very active within the community, although his public presence has diminished. Just like Twin Flames Universe. Many of his followers continue to revere him as a world teacher, maintaining that the legal actions were these orchestrated attacks by dark forces. They assert that the court rulings misunderstood or distorted the nature of esoteric healing. However, for critics and former members, the damage is done. Universal Medicine is a dangerous organization that exploits and takes advantage of people who are vulnerable and most likely very sick under the guise of spiritual healing. It's dangerous, disgusting, and I don't know how someone can ruin so many lives and not feel totally, utterly ashamed with themselves. I mean, this is a great example of the dangers of unchecked alternative health movements. I mean, we have people out there still, even today, drinking their own urine, drinking raw milk, eating food lifestyles that do not help them, thinking that they're full of parasites, so they're paying some wellness influencer for some type of oral treatment to treat their parasites, doing coffee enemas, like doing all of these things that there's no true scientific base that it will cure your disease, cure your cancer. And I don't say all this to diminish anyone who has had a negative experience with the healthcare profession. Especially in America, it is very frustrating and daunting, and aggravating. And I think that's, in my opinion, since pharmaceuticals are monetized, there's a lack of trust because money creates incentive. But not every single doctor is driven by money. Many of these people go into hundreds of thousands of debt so that they can become doctors because they truly do want to help people. And I think that discernment is just so, so important. And being honest with yourself is so, so important. There is no magical cure to whatever it is you're dealing with. There could be many, many, many things that you adjust in your life, that you make changes that can help you thrive and change. But there's definitely not one size fits all because we're all so different. We're all so diverse, and that's beautiful. But I just really want to take this moment to just, I always say stay skeptical at the end of my videos. And I really want to encourage people to stay skeptical because it's so easy for someone to do exactly what I'm doing, sit in front of a camera and speak with conviction, speak confidently as if I know everything because they want a following, because they want to sell you something, because they have a brand deal with whatever supplement they're talking about. And maybe some of the things I've mentioned, you're like, hold on, I had a great experience with my coffee enema. I felt great after I drinking my raw milk or whatever it may be. I only mentioned a few, but that's fantastic. It does not necessarily mean that that's the cure all for you. I just want people to be safe, to be careful, and to really, just like you might get a second opinion from a doctor, do more research. Do more research on both sides. If an influencer is saying, I love this coffee enema or I love this supplement, maybe do a little research about the opposite point of view on it, just to be sure. That way you will be able to have collected all of the information and make an educated decision for yourself. Who knows? Maybe you do need whatever cleanse and it will make you feel better because you're drinking or eating more vegetables than you normally might because you do this juice cleanse. Whatever it might be, just please be discernful. Discernful? Use discernment. Be careful and just let me know what you think about this. This is the type of group that preys so specifically on a certain group of people, specifically even women. It's just like our reproductive capabilities are so precious to us and so personal to us. And to have that exploited is infuriating. And it makes me sad that this person is still doing what he's doing. Anyways, if you want to create more awareness, go ahead and share this video or follow me on, I'm trying to be more active on Instagram and other spaces. So find me at Let the Fresh Air in those spaces and let me know what you think about this video. Of course, I don't mean to offend anyone if you are in more to like alternative wellness spaces. I kind of am too. Like I'm just curious about everything. I think you should try things if it's going to make you feel better, but just be very cautious of the source. One of my favorite anti-MLM creators, Hannah Alonso, she always says, consider the source. Consider the source. Who are they? Do they have an agenda? Do they want to sell you something? Because the wellness industry is worth a lot more than the pharmaceutical industry at this point by several trillions. So just be aware of that. Anyone trying to shill some supplement to you probably has ulterior motives. They're probably getting some kickback. They're probably making some kind of money off of you. So just be aware of that, guys. Just consider that. All right. I appreciate you guys. I'm off my soapbox now. Please, I mean, we're all entitled to our opinion. Please don't get mad if you're like a wellness girly and you can do whatever you want. Just be safe about it. All right. I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for your support and stay safe out there. Ask questions and always stay skeptical and use discernment. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, your night, your weekend, whatever. And I will see you in my next video soon.